Hi, it's Robert Mendelson, Fractional CMO here in beautiful Montreal, welcoming you to another episode of the Fractional Pros Canada podcast. We're part of Fractional Pros Canada, the home for Canada's fractional community, and you can find us on Facebook. We bring you conversations about everything fractional that matters for fractional executives and businesses from coast to coast. Think of this as your go-to spot for real talk, practical wisdom, and strategies you can actually use, all without the corporate fluff and with plenty of Canadian content. Whether you're a fractional pro or a business in our great country of Canada and beyond, this conversation is for you. Grab your espresso and let's dive in. Welcome to the Fractional Pros Canada podcast. I'm your host and fractional CMO, Robert Mendelson, here in beautiful Montreal. My guest today is a leader who for 20 years has been dedicated to solving one of the biggest challenges in business, the fact that it is lonely at the top. In 2005, she founded MacKay CEO Forums with a powerful dream to populate the world with inspiring leaders. And since then, over 5,000 Canadian CEOs, executives, and business owners have participated in their confidential peer learning groups. Today, MacKay CEO Forums has grown to over 1,200 members, more than 60 forum chairs, over 200 MacKay advisors, and 25 partners across Canada. She's also the co-author of The Modern Trusted Advisor and the bestseller I Don't Have Time. And her new Forbes-published book, It's Lonely at the Top, will be released in the coming months. Joining us from just down the street in Vancouver is Dr. Nancy MacKay, the founder and CEO of MacKay CEO Forums. Nancy, welcome to the Fractional Pros Canada podcast.
Thank you, Rob, for inviting me to join you here today.
All right, so Nancy, you have a really interesting background and blend of skills. Your early days, your academic background, I noticed is very science-y. You have degrees in math, management sciences, management information systems, and then later on you go and you found a company built on a very human-centric mission of peer support and overcoming loneliness. So I'm curious how that all connects and how you draw a line from the deep analytical, data-driven background from your academic days to founding MacKay CEO Forums.
Thanks, Rob, for just sharing some insights around my background. And my entire career, I've been working with CEOs and executives and business owners. And so when I was a university professor and I taught in the MBA programs, I was always focused on how do I help executives be more effective, be more successful. And then after 15 years, actually, as an academic, I thought to myself, I'd rather be working in the real world and working directly with the CEOs who are actually making the decisions so that I can have an even bigger impact. And so that's when I got into consulting, and I worked with many global consulting firms and what have you. And then one day I got invited to be a speaker at a confidential peer group in Vancouver, Canada, which is where I'm mainly based. And that changed my life forever because once I did that presentation, I learned more about these CEO peer groups and what actually happens and how CEOs can learn from each other and support each other. I thought, this is what I want to, I literally said to my husband, who's also Rob MacKay, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I'm going to be populating the world, inspiring leaders. I'm going to be bringing CEOs together because of the impact that I wanted to have on the Canadian business community and beyond.
So that was your first experience with that peer group format of learning with CEOs?
That's right. Yes. One of my clients, because I was an independent consultant after I did my experience with these large firms. And one of my clients was Ted Dickner, the CEO of Mr. Lube Canada, a great Canadian brand. They're still involved with MacKay CEO Forums. Not Ted, but it was a member of this confidential CEO peer group. And I had just finished doing, as an independent consultant, a strategic planning project with Mr. Lube Canada. And he said, Nancy, why don't you come and talk to the guys? Because this was 20 years ago. And they didn't allow women in his peer group, actually. He said, can you come and talk to the guys and just share your experience of how you helped Mr. Lube? And he said that, some of them might want to hire you because you had such a big impact. And I said, well, sure, Ted, thanks for inviting me. I'm happy to help you and anybody that's important to you, not really knowing what these peer groups were about. And so there I was with 14 CEOs, very successful, best managed company CEOs from all different industries. And they were self-moderated. They did their own thing. Like one of the members actually ran the meetings or what have you. And so I did my presentation. And then afterwards, I debriefed with the person who was their quasi chair, we'll say. And he said, "We loved your presentation. I'm going to transition out of this role and retire. And so do you want to throw your name in the hat? We're actually going to hire someone that can moderate our group." And I nearly fell off my chair because of the fact that they didn't allow women in. And I said, "I don't exactly know what you guys do. And like, hey, it's lonely at the top. I get it. No judgment. But if you decide you want to allow women in, then I'll throw my name in the hat and I'll learn more. And perhaps this is going to be a good thing." So I'm so grateful because they got together and had a big meeting and decided it was time. And so they selected me as their chair. And that group still exists today. I'm not their chair, but I'm grateful for those 14 guys for believing in me. And many of them have been on my boards and are my mentors and close friends and what have you. So, and now we have over 35% women in our confidential peer groups across Canada because we're very committed to diversity and inclusion and what have you. But it all started with Ted, who is a member of this group, my client, who invited me in. And that changed my life forever. So I'm just so grateful that sometimes in life you discover what you're truly meant to be doing. And that's what happened with that peer group.
It's always great to have that clarifying moment where you just have that aha moment of, this is why I'm here. This is what I should be doing.
Well, and it's for me, it's always been, what is the biggest impact I can have based on my strengths and my unique abilities? And how can I spend more time doing the things I love to do that have the biggest impact? So when I discovered these peer groups, and I still today chair a group that I started 17 years ago, and I just started a new $1 billion plus CEO group. And I just love getting in that room and just creating that space so that CEOs can just speak freely about everything, business, family, and personal. And it's not about me. I'm not the star in the room. It's all about them. And they're helping each other solve their toughest problems, maximize their best opportunities. And when I was a solo practitioner, because I know a lot of your listeners are fractionals or solo practitioners and have taken the entrepreneurial leap and running their own businesses and what have you, I just really felt like I could, using my skills in one day of my time, impact 14 CEOs who could then leave the meetings and just with greater confidence and courage to have a successful career and also learn from each other that they don't have to sacrifice their health and their important personal and family relationships. Because the reality is, without our health, we've got nothing. And I don't know about you, but Rob and my adult kids, they're more important to me than anyone else on the planet. So really, oftentimes CEOs get caught up in I have to work 24/7. That's the I don't have time trap. And so through peer learning, they realized that, no, it's actually possible to be a successful CEO and you don't have to sacrifice everything. And you have to learn how to master your time and really surround yourself with people that are going to help you save time.
Your mission, your stated mission, is to populate the world with inspiring leaders. And I'm curious, you've worked or interacted with a lot of CEOs, and going all the way back to 2005. I'm curious if you've seen any changes in the types of issues and challenges that CEOs typically face from 20 years ago to today. Are there fundamentals that remain the same, or have things changed because of the changing, environment, macroeconomics, all those other factors? I'm curious what your observations are on that.
Well, I think the big shift right now is AI disruption, and it's changing the way we work, the way we lead, the way we run our daily lives. It's a very exciting opportunity. I think it's the most exciting time to be alive as a trusted advisor and as a CEO because things are changing so quickly. So the big thing is it's exponential change. It's exponential technologies. And so we have to really work on dialing up our resilience. And we're spending a lot of time on our unstoppable CEO retreats and programs for Canadian CEOs and executives, and all of our forum chairs who chair our groups, because it's those two things. It's the, how do you really make sure that your mental fitness is at its highest level to then be able to speed up your ability to accept AI and all the other changes going on in Canada and in the rest of the world. So I think it's the pace of change that's been the biggest. It's a big deal.
No question about that. Let's talk about the pure learning model. So there may be people listening who aren't too familiar with that concept. So give us an idea of what does that actually look like in practice, and how is a MacKay CEO forum different from what would otherwise be maybe a traditional mentorship program or a more typical business owner networking group?
I think that, the big thing is most CEOs and executives are not aware that formal peer support exists. And this is heartbreaking for me after 20 years of populating the world with inspiring leaders and offering peer support to Canadian CEOs, executives, and business owners. It's just raising the awareness. So I'm so grateful that you asked that question. It's like, what is it? Well, imagine that if you're a CEO of a company that's 5 million to 5 billion plus in revenue, that's our MacKay community. And you're sitting around the table with 14 other CEOs from all different industries, because that's our belief of the best learning, is sitting around the table with people who have different perspectives from all different industries. And you have the opportunity, and there's no competitors in the room. So you have the opportunity to put everything on the table. Everything that you wouldn't talk to your board about, you wouldn't talk to your top team about, sometimes you wouldn't even talk to your family about. And you just have this safe place to say, here's what's going on for me. And in particular in Canada today, with the tariffs and the recession and the AI disruption, there's no shortage of what do we do? So you've got a trusted team of 14 CEOs from all different industries that you just put everything on the table. And we really, how we're different from other either peer learning groups or mentorship programs or what have you, is we really share true stories of what have we done, the mistakes we've made, the lessons we've learned, so that we can help other people be successful and they can help us be successful. So it's a very high impact way to just get a lot of learning in a short period of time. So our groups meet 6 times a year for a day, and they do a 2-day retreat. And every meeting, every time, guaranteed, each member gets to put their issues on the table, and they're going to learn from their peers, and they're going to be making commitments. Because let's face it, if we sit around for a day, but we're actually not taking action, then nothing's going to change. We're not going to raise our game. The organizations that we participate in or lead, it's not going to really help them either. So it's a very structured approach and a very focused way to get an instant group of a team of 14 people that are your peers to help you. And the key is find a best fit peer group. So whether it's a MacKay group or any other peer group organization on the planet, my goal is to just make sure that every Canadian CEO, because we're a Canadian business, I'm the majority owner, we're focused on supporting the Canadian business community, just surround yourself with peers, because I don't see how you're going to win in this type of a exponential change environment without getting access to additional brain power to help you.
You have a very powerful question that you ask, and the question is really simple. Are you an inspiring leader or a despiring leader? Explain to us what's the difference between the two, especially despiring. I think everybody can figure out what inspiring is, but what does despiring look like? And how many leaders do you think are in the despiring category without even realizing it?
If we take a look at any of the research, and I'll talk about Gallup because I'm a believer in a lot of their tools and a lot of their research, is that most people in companies today are not all in, and they're in environments where they're not feeling like they're getting to use most of their strengths most of the time and what have you. So I think employee satisfaction is at an all-time low, despite the, I don't know, billions of dollars companies invest in leadership development and all these things. So we have a big challenge, and it's a big, big problem, is this whole idea of, and I think the two questions are very powerful. One is, what is an inspiring leader? And what I've learned over 20 years of doing this work is we have to learn how to inspire ourselves every day. And that's a big enough job. And so this is my new book with Forbes on it's lonely at the top, how to inspire yourself as a CEO and your top team, because that's the beginning of inspiring leadership. I have to figure out, how do I master my time, my passion, my relationships, my social contribution, my ability to really take care of my health and what have you. So we have a whole toolkit on how do you inspire yourself every day. And it's not an easy thing. So I spend a lot of time personally every day. How do I inspire myself and continue to focus on building on my strengths? Despiring leaders is the opposite. And we have a lot of people that it's no judgment, because we're a judgment-free culture in MacKay Forums. We want to help people get on the journey of how do you inspire yourself every day so that you can inspire others. Despiring is you're not self-aware. And we have this old leadership style that's the bosses, we didn't even use the word boss in the KCO forums. The bosses are at the top of the org chart and they're telling people what to do. And it's kind of this old school leadership style where I have to be the smartest person in the room if I'm the CEO. And in fact, we have the opposite approach. It's not about that. It's about building future leaders. It's about helping people learn their strengths and how to inspire themselves and how they can make the biggest contribution. So it's a whole shift from this idea of the bosses have all the answers to a mindset of self-leadership. How do I lead myself? And this way I can serve others.
Yeah, I was going to ask the question, a follow-up question. What are the signs that we might recognize in ourselves that might indicate we are despiring as leaders? But you made a great point that often a despiring leader is not self-aware. So therefore, if somebody's not self-aware, they probably wouldn't be able to tell that they're actually a despiring leader.
And there's lots of feedback mechanisms that asking people for feedback in terms of what's working well, what's not working well. And that's, again, there's a lack of honest, authentic feedback, truth telling, what have you. And so it's really, how do we continue to develop our own self-awareness so that we can be open to feedback and just hearing from the people that we're working with. What am I doing that's working? That's inspiring. What am I doing that's not working for you? And how do we have honest conversations? And again, my magic wand would be if everyone was self-led and everyone learned how to inspire themselves, then people aren't complaining about each other, our egos aren't getting in the way. People are having honest conversations around, here's the support that I need, and they're telling the truth and they're solving problems together. So that's what we need to shift to is let's get everybody self-led. Let's give them the toolkit. How do you inspire yourself every day? And how do you give everyone else the toolkit of mastering your time and building on your strengths and really learning what are your passions and what's your gift? Like how can you make the biggest contribution? And that is going to eliminate a lot of the despiring behaviors if everyone had a mindset of, I'm going to figure this out because I want to show up as the best version of myself every day.
So let's double click on that a little bit. So in order to show up at the workplace as an inspiring leader, first we need to be inspired ourselves. We need to wake up and get into inspired mode pretty quickly. Are there any kind of tips you can share or anything that you do that helps you, show up as an inspiring leader every day?
It starts with self-care. And it's one of these areas where it's a big gap, is not focusing on, we have 100 waking hours a week as human beings if we get the recommended 7 to 8 hours sleep. And this is I don't have time, because I hear people all day long saying, I don't have time. And the reality is we all have time. We have 24/7 and we have 100 waking hours. So what we need to be able to do is to say, where am I spending my time? And I would say that a lot of CEOs will say, well, it's the 24/7 trap. I have to work 24/7 in order to be a successful CEO. And I'll do my best to get enough sleep. I'll do my best to get my annual health check. I'll do my best to get exercise or what have you. But I do have to do this thing called the CEO job. That's called the 24/7 trap. And that's heartbreaking because that's where we see a lot of CEOs really get into overwhelm and not take care of themselves. So when I work with CEOs, we have to flip that script and start with, okay, what do you really need to do to take care of you? Exercise every day or set your own goal. These are my goals. Like, I exercise every day. I do my mental fitness 12 minutes every morning to get my mental fitness in. I make sure I'm spending time with my husband doing date nights and spending time with my adult kids and spending time with people that matter to me and, doing my volunteer work and all these things that make me a human being. That's called self-care. All these things that help me show up as the best version of myself. And then I can look at it and say, realistically, well, then how many hours do I have to do this thing called work? So it's a mindset shift from, I don't have time to take care of me, to I am going to take care of me and the people that I love. And and then what happens is our brain becomes a lot more effective because we know we have X amount of time and we're not sacrificing our own self-care.
Well, what kind of mental fitness exercises do you do? I'm really curious about that. What does that look like?
The big thing that I learned this year, because I noticed in the first quarter of this year with all the tariff crisis and all of the stress going on in the Canadian business community, I was coaching a lot of CEOs on mental toughness. And I've spent 20 years coaching thousands of CEOs on mental toughness. But like this year in particular, it was, first quarter was really tough and it continues to be tough. So I discovered Positive Intelligence by Shazad Shameen. And it's a book and it's an app that goes with it. And it's just the most game-changing mental fitness tool I've ever discovered in my 20 years of coaching CEOs. And so it's literally, he talks about 10-second PQ reps 100 times a day, which when I first learned about it, it's like, I don't have time in my head thinking, what? And then the reality is in 12 minutes, you can get those 100 PQ reps, and it's a guided breathing and getting grounded and really getting in the moment before you even start your day. So that's what I do now. It's 12 minutes every morning, and I coach a lot of CEOs on this toolkit. And there's just a really practical app that's readily available. You can use a self-directed app to learn this mental fitness tool. So I've added that to my toolkit, and I'm really challenging all CEOs and all of our forum chairs who, as you know, are either fractional executives or trusted advisors, coaches, consultants. We're training all of them on the Unstoppable Chair and the Unstoppable CEO Retreat to make sure that we're all focused on taking care of our mental fitness in order to be able to absorb all the exponential change and AI that's going on right now.
Well, thank you for sharing that tip. I'm going to check that app out. I'm curious. Sounds like it'd be a big positive addition to my daily routine. So I'm going to check that out.
Right.
There's a really interesting stat on your profile, a 708% ROI for members of MacKay forums as measured by the ROI Institute of Canada. That's a pretty precise number for something that sounds like maybe it could be soft skills. So I'm curious, how do you measure ROI, and how do you measure ROI so precisely?
This is something that I learned about the ROI Institute during COVID, actually, and I hadn't heard of. And it's a global organization, but there is one, the ROI Institute of Canada. So I got introduced to the person that runs that, and I immediately hired them because I wanted to make sure that as MacKay CEO Forums, if anybody's going to join one of our peer groups or becomes one of our forum chairs, they can be rest assured that the value of joining a peer group, because there's a time investment and there's also financial commitment to join a group, that people would get a huge ROI. So I don't know. They're the geniuses. They have a formal methodology. And so anyone listening in that wants to have a quantifiable measure of if they're doing some type of a leadership development or even the work that you do, they can, and they interviewed our members and they interviewed our forum chairs and they surveyed and they used their methodology to come up with that number, which is the value of just joining a peer group. It didn't include the value of attending all of our events and taking advantage of our member only WhatsApp groups and our partner program or any of those things. It's just, if someone were to commit to 4 times a year, sitting around the table with 14 CEOs, which is all of our members make that commitment to investing in peer support, that they would get a 708% ROI.
Wow. So let's go back to the format of the peer groups. So there's confidential conversations happening in the peer groups. What's the mechanism that turns those confidential conversations into the hard returns, like, increased profit or employee retention or other benefits that the CEOs in the forums get from being in the forums and being part of those confidential conversations?
The starting point is really being a lifelong learner. So all of our members, they join a peer group because they want to continue to raise their game forever. It's not like they achieved CEO utopia and they don't have to continue to learn and grow. So they're lifelong learners. And that mindset is the beginning of getting a huge ROI. And then the actual mechanics is each group of 14 CEOs meets 6 times a year for a day, and they do a 2-day retreat with their chair. And every meeting, every time, there's a 1-hour speaker on a topic that's relevant to CEOs. So they get a lot of value by the very practical, high-impact speakers every time they show up. Every time a CEO shows up, they're guaranteed they can put their business, family, and personal issues on the table. So their time's not going to be wasted. They can hit the ground running, and the expectation is they're prepared to hit the ground running and put their issues on the table. And then when we do the peer learning, which is getting access to real stories of mistakes people have made, the lessons they've learned, it could be, what are you doing with AI? How are you getting an ROI with AI? What resources are you using? It could be, how are you dealing with the tariffs? What are some of the key strategies? Who are the key partners you're working with? It could be whatever is keeping CEOs awake. That's what they're putting on the table. So you can imagine, if I'm trying to figure that out as a CEO on my own, if I have 14 other CEOs helping me, what kind of an ROI do you think you're going to get? So it's a mindset of, it doesn't have to be lonely at the top. I don't have to do this alone. I can access. And they're best fit groups, right? Because I chair a group that's a $1 billion plus CEO group. So those CEOs have their own challenges because of the complexity of the type of organization. We have peer groups for smaller entrepreneurial business owners and what have you. So it's making sure, in order to get the ROI, you're sitting around the table with a best fit peer group. People who've been there and done that before in terms of where you're headed, and they're walking in your shoes. So the peer learning is a big deal. And then we always leave with bold commitments, because if we're going to spend 6 hours together in a peer group meeting, let's make sure, based on what you learned from the speaker, what you learned from your peers, you're going to leave with some solid, practical, actionable commitments. And then when you come back to your next peer group meeting, there's a new speaker, you can put new issues on the table, and you report back on, this is what I actually did. And here's the ROI that I got from actually taking action on the insights I got from my peers, from my chair, from the MacKay broader community.
Let's talk about The Modern Trusted Advisor, which is the title of a book that you co-authored. And the term the modern trusted advisor, it sounds a lot like a lot of fractional leaders who are listening in. I'm curious, what do you see as the definition of a modern trusted advisor?
And as you know, Rob, I'm a huge believer in fractionals, and I've hired fractional executives for, 15 years as I've scaled MacKay forms. And I just encourage people, and most people aren't even aware that fractional executives exist. And so I spend a lot of time really educating our members around, there's a whole talent pool of people. And if they're modern trusted advisors, that's the ideal, right? So with the Modern Trusted Advisor book that I co-authored with Alan Weiss, who is one of my long-term mentors when I was a solo practitioner, the goal was to really give trusted advisors the same toolkit that we give CEOs. So at MacKay Forums, we call it our MacKay Mastery Model for Inspired Leadership. And there's 10 key leadership strategies. So we took that, which is all of our members get access to that, and we really made it relatable to all modern trusted advisors. Are you mastering your time and your passion and your relationships and your ego and your mental toughness and your innovation mastery and your social contribution, right? So it's those 10 elements so that trusted advisors, ideally, and all the fractionals, the best fractionals that I've hired, they step into my shoes. When they're talking to me, they understand my world as a CEO, and they're wanting to help me solve problems and what have you. And they treat me like a peer. And so that's the idea of the modern trusted advisors. It is like step into the shoes of the clients that you're going to be working with and understand how to show up as an inspired modern trusted advisor. And you'll be exponentially more successful when you're showing up as the best version of yourself and making the biggest impact.
You touched on the work to do as far as increasing awareness of the fractional option, like I like to call it the fractional option for business leaders in Canada in particular, where the fractional option is not as well known. That's really what drove me to start the Fractional Pros Canada community January of this year, with now over 1,000 fractionals across Canada. I'm curious, have you seen anything that would indicate that the awareness of business leaders of the fractional option, so hire a fractional CMO or COO or CFO instead of a full-time equivalent, is that growing, or is there still a lot of work to do to get the word out there that there is this fractional option to help businesses, especially in Canada these days?
I think the biggest thing is, and as you know, we have over 60 forum chairs across the country, and there's quite a few of our forum chairs that are fractional CFOs or COOs or CHROs or what have you. So the more they meet fractionals that they hold in high regard and that they see that what they have to offer, then they start to realize, oh, what's a fractional CFO and what's a fractional COO? I didn't even know that there was such a thing as a fractional CHRO or CMO or what have you. So it's getting more evidence that this very talented group of individuals with lots of experience can be quickly brought. At least this is what I value about the fractionals that I've hired. I mean, they've been there and done that before, and they can quickly hit the ground running and start making a big impact. And like, who wouldn't want that in today's world? So, and then also just having people like you, and I know we've invited you to become one of our MacKay advisors, and having you become a speaker, and so that our members meet very talented fractional executives and start to see that is definitely an option to help scale our businesses and attract top talent.
Time mastery. You've written extensively on the topic, and it's a fundamental skill you teach. And I mean, everybody can always do a little better in time mastery. I mean, I am absolutely no exception to that. I'm curious if there's maybe what's the single biggest mistake you see CEOs, executives, probably fractionals, probably everybody who's listening, no matter what they do in life. What's the single biggest mistake that is preventing us from mastering our time better?
I already shared, there's three. If you're asking me to give one, I already shared the 24/7 trap, where it's a mindset of the only way I can be successful is if I work 24/7. And then you sacrifice all the other things. So that's like the biggest mistake. The second one, I call it the do-it-yourself syndrome. And this is where you think you're the only one good enough, smart enough, fast enough to get the job done. So you're rolling up your sleeves, getting it all done. And yet the reality is, if you actually just stopped and thought about what are your strengths where should you be spending your time to make the biggest impact? Get everything else off your plate, hire other people, outsource things, like just have a mindset, which I do every quarter, take a look at. Okay, this quarter, where did I spend my time? What do I need to get off my plate to build future leaders and continue to evolve in my CEO role and what have you? And then the third mistake, which is related to positive intelligence, is making decisions when we're in a negative emotional state, because we make really bad decisions and we make mistakes and we say things, we bust relationships, all these things when we call it below the line in a negative emotional state. So learning how to get yourself into a positive emotional state, and literally within a second, you can get yourself, once you learn this positive intelligence, you can get yourself into a positive state. That's when you're the most creative and empathetic and innovative and what have you, and you can make great decisions and build great relationships. So those are the three things: 24/7 trap, do-it-yourself syndrome, and we call it the negativity virus, where you're in a negative state and then you're impacting, and because emotions are contagious. So when you're showing up in a negative state, especially with what's going on right now in Canada, you're having a negative impact on the people around you. So you want to be self-aware, and you really want to practice showing up in a positive state.
The do-it-yourself syndrome resonates with me a lot, because I used to be a much bigger victim of that than I am these days. And that's really that first time I remember delegating something that I thought only I could do. And it was really scary. It was really scary to trust somebody else to do it. And of course, it worked out fine. If you have the right person that you're delegating to, it's you look at it and it's like, why didn't I do this years ago? Is there anything that you see that is the biggest barrier? Is it always that fear of losing control and afraid that the person we're going to delegate it to can't possibly do it as well as we do?
Yeah, that's our ego getting in the way of, like there isn't anybody smart enough, good enough, fast enough to get it done. And when we're able to park our egos and realize, well, what if there was someone? Let me find someone. And how do I make sure I get them set up for success and fail fast? We've all made hiring mistakes. We all continue to make hiring mistakes. We do the best we can to place bets on talent, and it's my firm belief is, if I do delegate and give someone, true delegation is really giving up the decision-making authority, then I have to make sure I do my daily huddles, my weekly huddles, my monthly huddles to make sure that person is set up for success. And if for whatever reason I made a bad bet and this wasn't the right person to take this over, that's okay. Let's find someone else and let's find something else for the person to do. And so it's taking the risk. It's really about, yes, you're taking a risk every time you place a bet on someone, and it's worth the risk, because it is amazing when you do place a good bet that person is able to really step up and be a lot smarter, better, faster, and that frees us up to make an even bigger contribution.
Let's talk a little bit about the work that you do outside the forums. You're involved with the GenWell project, which you describe as a global human connection movement. You're also involved with the Rick Hansen Foundation and Canada's Great Kitchen Party, which as a foodie is really interesting to me. I'm going to learn more about that. How does this focus on human connection at a societal level inform the work that you do with high performance CEOs in the boardroom? What do you take from there and bring in there?
I think that social connection is just so fundamental to inspiring leadership and mental fitness and everything we do at MacKay Seal Forums. So when I met Pete Bombachi, who's the CEO of the GenWell Project, he's one of our nonprofit registered charity members. We sponsor one in every one of our groups. And he told me that he's starting up GenWell and what I support. And I just thought to myself, I totally believe in it's so important for social connection and for all human beings, and in particular, CEOs, executives, and business owners. It doesn't have to be lonely at the top when you really are intentional about what are the relationships you need to build, and you're spending time with people in person is just so fundamental to mental fitness and well-being. So I'm excited that they've now just been designated as an official registered charity, and the World Health Organization has endorsed them, and it's now exponential growth to speed up this human connection movement. So totally aligned with our dream at MacKay Farms, and very committed to the long-term volunteer work that I do with General Project.
Let's wrap it up with the question that we ask all our guests here on the Fractional Pros Canada pod, which is, if you could put one message on a billboard for millions of CEOs and business leaders to see every day as they drive by it on the highway of life, what would it say on that billboard?
Love this question. I think it would say, just show up every day as the best version of yourself and be on that lifelong journey of how to do that.
Show up every day as the best version of yourself and be on that lifelong journey. Nice. Nancy, thanks so much for sharing with us today, taking some time out of your very busy schedule. And we'll link up to all the ways people can connect with you down in the show notes. And thanks again for being here on the Fractional Pros Canada podcast.
Thanks, Rob. Very inspired by the work that you're doing. Congratulations on building a community of fractionals across this country. Canada really does need that fractional talent pool. So here to support in any way that I can.
Thanks so much, Nancy. That's a wrap on another episode of the Fractional Pros Canada podcast. If you're a fractional professional based in Canada, we'd love to have you join us in the Fractional Pros Canada Facebook group, the home for Canada's fractional community. It's where Canadian fractional executives connect, share insights, and help each other succeed. Until next time, I'm Robert Mendelson, Fractional CMO. May your impact be full-time, even if your hours are fractional.